Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, September 13th, 2012. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, we continue our series on the emerging craft beer culture here in Northwest Arkansas with a conversation with another home brewer gone pro. Steve Rehbock sits down to talk to us in the tasting room of his brand new brewery, Saddlebock Brewing Company. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. I'm on Twitter. You can find me at Basic Brewing, all one word. On Facebook, I'm at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james. And our show page on Facebook is at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Here's how that works. Whenever you want to shop for anything on Amazon.com, go to our site first. Go to basicbrewing.com first. Click on the Amazon link there, the Amazon ad on the right-hand side of the page. Then when you do that, it'll take you to Amazon, and then you can do your business. You can just shop, and you won't even know what's going on. We'll get a hunk of whatever you buy, and it won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping to support this show, and we greatly appreciate that support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too, and those work in a similar fashion. You can find our iPhone and Android podcast apps on their respective stores, and the Android app is also on Amazon.com. We're on the BlackBerry Podcast Directory, and we're on the Stitcher app as well. The online forum to submit your data for the Brew Your Own magazine Basic Brewing Radio collaborative experiment that we're doing in conjunction with the Australian National Homebrew Conference is now live. You can find that form at basicbrewing.com/experiment. You'll probably remember what we're doing there is we're comparing chilling techniques and their effect on beer and the comparative effects on the resources that you're using, like water, for instance. In my experiment, I'm comparing immersion chilling versus no-chill. No-chill is just running hot wort off into a plastic container and letting it cool off on its own. Of course, that container has to be designed to be food safe and to take the heat of that process. But you can choose to compare any two of the chilling methods that you want, though. There are more details at basicbrewing.com/experiment. Also, if you want to see a handy archive of all the episodes featuring collaborative experiments, you can go to basicbrewingradio.com and find a link at the top of that page. There I've listed, on that page that you go to, from that link, I've listed all the collaborative experiment episodes all on one page. A few of you have requested that, and I finally got it done. My chilling experiment is in the fermenter stage. 2 glass carboys that need to be bottled soon, maybe today and tomorrow. Now, my goal is to make a document detailing my process up to the sensory evaluation stage to give you kind of a guide as to what kinds of information that we're looking for in the data. After I bottle the beers, I'll try to get that posted and let you know when that is. On the subject of no-chill, I got a note from Adam in Victoria, Australia. Adam started brewing with no-chill when he ran into water usage restrictions in his area. He's got a few tips for no-chill brewers. Adam says, due to the extended period of time your hops are in contact with hot wort while in the cube, as mentioned in your show, you need to bring your bittering hop additions forward 15 minutes. For example, a 90-minute addition at 75 minutes, 60-minute addition at 45, etc. As for your flavor additions, Adam says, I've tried a few techniques now. The best is to actually use a very old brewing technique and make them first wort hop additions instead. So he's playing with all kinds of interesting non-traditional techniques. While this will cause havoc with your brewing software and will probably technically increase the IBU count when tested in a lab, the result, Adam says, is actually the flavor addition that you're after, with no noticeable added bitterness. Very interesting. That sounds like an experiment as well. Adam says it provides a very rounded profile, and I've tried the same beer in both my 3-vessel system and my no-chill system, with the hop addition modifications, and the beers are virtually indistinguishable, other than, in my opinion, the brew-in-a-bag / no-chill gives a more rounded flavor profile, although this could just be because of first wort hopping, not necessarily the difference between the two techniques. Either way, I'm making beers, or better beers now, and I'm a happy brewer. Very nice. Oh, and Adam says, as for your aroma additions, 10 to 7 minutes you do at flame out, and anything below that you put in the cube. Of course, dry hopping is still dry hopped, Adam says. Appreciate that, Adam. Thanks a lot. Well, that's one no-chill brewer's take on the process. If you have a different approach, drop me a line and let me know. I'm looking forward to playing with that technique more and kind of figuring it out myself. Okay, as you've heard on the podcast before, Northwest Arkansas is enjoying an emergence of craft brewing in the area. Last year, we had one brew pub. This year, we've got at least 5 more commercial breweries, and possibly even more than that. As home brewers, I think we all have an itch to brew beer professionally. And my purpose in doing these interviews, these features on these brand new breweries, is to give those who want to scratch that itch a bit of advice and perspective from those who are going through the process from different approaches. Well, this week, Andy Sparks of thehomebrewery.com joins me as we talk with Steve Rehbock of Saddlebock Brewery. Well, Steve Rehbock, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you very much.
And Andy Sparks is here sitting at the bar with me.
It's always great to be here on the show.
This is another in our continuing series of Northwest Arkansas breweries. Where are we at, Steve?
That's a good question. When people ask that, I can tell them Springdale, I can tell them Fayetteville, I can tell them Goshen or Washington County, and I'm pretty much correct on everything. It is a Springdale mailing address, but I can throw a stone over to Fayetteville from here, and I'm on Fayetteville City Water, and I am on Goshen Planning.
But the name of the brewery is Saddlebock. And where did that come from?
We are on a horse farm. My wife purchased this farm a little over a year ago, and we were sitting around trying to think of a name we could do for a little brewery if we're going to build it, and the horse themes were obvious, so the saddle came to me, and I thought, well, my last name's Rehbock, and I got the Bach with the beer reference in, why not use it?
It makes sense to me. And this is a really cool-looking building. It looks like a barn, and I would imagine if it gets, weathered over time a little bit, it might look like it's been here a while. Was that your intention?
Yeah, we wanted to fit into the surroundings. We're in a rural area. We had to get a conditional use permit. When the building across the street went in, that wasn't in effect. A lot of the neighbors complained about that. I talked to the neighbors first. I thought, well, I'm going to make this easy and fit in, and it went right through the planning at Washington County. It hasn't had any issues, and the neighbors are all happy. It looks good, and it looks like a horse could walk out of here at any minute.
Tell us your story, man. How did you come to this point?
Oh boy, how far back do you want to go?
As far as a brewer. We don't want where you were born and all that, although if it's interesting to the story.
Yeah. Well, I started home brewing. I've always been interested in home brewing, and I wanted to do it. And I walked into Andy's store a couple of times, and the second time I walked in, I walked out with a kit. And I said, this is it. I'm going to do it. I think it was 3 or 4 Thanksgivings ago, and I picked up a honey wheat kit. And it was an extract kit, and it came out good. People liked it. And I was hooked.
A testament to your kit there, Andy.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate that.
So if you don't guarantee that if you buy one of your kits, you will one day open a professional brewery.
No, we can't really offer that guarantee, but it's really cool that people have gotten really passionate after starting at my store and after watching your show. So we are in the reason I'm doing this series is kind of to document the sprouting of the seeds around here. I mean, all at once this year we are seeing local beer come up on the scene. How did you make that decision to get into it? Did you
make it all on your own, or did you hear other things were happening, or how did you come about that?
Well, there are a lot of factors in that, and no, it was not alone. My wife has been a critical part of this. Okay, she has been working her tail off with this, and she's enjoying it. She doesn't get into too many of my ideas, so I thought I had a good one when she started signing on. I think this area has been a little deprived, maybe a little behind the rest of the country, so I think the market was prime. And we're in a fairly upscale area with people coming in for Fortune 500 companies, and I can imagine they sit down and they say, hey, what local beer can you give me? It didn't take a lot of market research to figure that out. And at first I thought, well, I just want to brew something small and get on tap at a couple of my favorite restaurants. And when she bought this property a year ago, we really weren't considering opening a brewery. But after she bought it, and we looked around, we said, we could do this. We could actually get a little bit bigger. If we're going to go in and get permits and get Arkansas Native Brewers License and go through the federal process, we might as well ratchet it up and go a little bigger.
And then, so how did you? I mean, one of the we've been talking to people about their business plans and the structure of their business. You are obviously a production brewery, but how do you put the numbers together to make it make sense of how big to build and how do you do the numbers?
Well, you have to start familiarizing yourself with your budget. What can you do? You're probably going to have some limitations on the top end because it's an expensive venture to get into. You have to have some familiarity with the market. I think the marketplace offered more of an unlimited cap than I can throw at it with my size brewery. I'm looking at all the breweries who are opening, and I think we can all go out there and sell all of our product and still not meet the demand. My education came through starting to go to conferences. We went to the AHA conference a little over a year ago, and they had a session there about opening a brewery. Mm-hmm. They had 4 fairly small microbreweries up there talking about their experiences, what they did, what they wish they did different. I listened and I learned.
Now, do you have investors lined up, or is this something that you guys are investing in yourselves, or how does this work? If you don't mind me, I don't want to know your, I don't want to see your IRS sheets or anything, but
don't tell that now. No, we started this as our own. We thought that we could come up with most of the capital ourselves, and that when we were ready to open, there would be some investments needed for some of the final arrangements. And what we've done is we've gone to some friends and family and let them invest, not in the business, but just as kind of a promissory note if they're interested, and we're going to give them a fixed return. So there's no risk on it for them, and we secured it. One person even wanted to secure it with some equipment, and we let them do that. They filed something with it, but the vast majority of the money came simply out of our pockets. We didn't have a mortgage on the property or anything like that, so we were able to do this fairly economically. And we set up a couple companies, actually. My wife owns the property. And, we have dram shop laws now in Arkansas, and it's something you have to consider. You have to go to the class, and when you get your license, and they talk about that, Mr. Bennett over at ABC talks a lot about liabilities. And if somebody's driving a car and they get in an accident and somewhere along the line they had a Saddlebock beer, I could potentially be sued. Mm-hmm. That has changed, and we weren't dram shop until I think 3 or 4 years ago.
Now, what's dram shop stand for?
I don't know what the abbreviation is, but it essentially gives liability down the chain from where a person could have become intoxicated, takes his responsibility away, and he can sue the bartender, the bar, the manufacturer, really anybody that he deemed irresponsible or caused him to drink.
So you're essentially setting up some sort of a liability shield.
Yeah, it's really, from a legal point of view, you almost have to think of that these days. So The brewery itself leases from my landlord, who happens to be my wife.
Now there's a sitcom. So let's talk about the structure. It's a 3-level structure, the barn.
Yeah, I've always wanted to be as efficient and green as possible. And I really felt by having 3 levels, it gave me all I could do towards that. Keeping a true cellar, the temperatures tend to stay in the upper 60s down there. Now, it's been a hot summer, and we've had the doors open a lot. It gets warm during the day, but if we keep it closed, it's really a true cellar in the 60s, and I don't need a whole lot of cooling for fermentation for ales. The upstairs is a loft area where we will do storage. It's kind of the cheap space, but we can gravity feed, not having to use an auger or anything to get our grain into our mash tun. We just pour it into the hopper, and we have a gate. We open and close it. It's really simple. I've seen a lot of breweries that I've visited, and they have issues with augers. And the central part of the brewery is where the brew house is. If I could have squeezed another floor, I probably could have gotten a gravity flow from the mash tun into the kettle where we wouldn't need a grant pump. That's the only thing I struggled with, that I really couldn't get away from the pump, but that's a pretty common feature on most breweries.
And I guess we should mention that your grain comes pre-milled.
Yes, we're getting the grain pre-milled. It's a little bit more expensive to do that, and you have to use it within a certain time frame. But you don't use the electricity to do it here. I don't use the labor to do it here, and that's been a choice I've been pretty happy with.
And there are safety issues that you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about the grain dust.
Yeah, that was a factor. When we put the electrical system in, there was a classification on the type of connections and all that he had to use, and we would have fallen into a high dust environment if we were grinding our own grain. It would have been much more expensive to do the electrical.
And anytime you want to jump in, Andy, just wave your hand and let me know. I'll be glad.
Well, you seem to be handling the questions quite effectively. And he knows more about his brewery than I do.
Well, I may miss something glaringly obvious. You never know. Talk about the brew house.
The brew house. I kind of mirrored my home brew, okay? I've got a hot liquor tank, and I was one of the oddballs that didn't use a mash tun that was insulated. I didn't feel I could control the temperature as well as I wanted to do for all the beers. I may want to raise it. I may want to do some decoction. I may want to step infuse. But I can do all I want to do with the same setup here. I have heat on my mash tun. It really was helpful the first 2 or 3 brews. Didn't have the strike temperature perfect. I kept it low on purpose because I knew I could heat it up. Very handy. You do the wheat beers, you want to kind of step it up anyways. We also separated off the whirlpool from the kettle. This will do a couple things. It'll provide me with a more efficient, effective boil and a more efficient removal of the trube or separation of the trube in the whirlpool. But from a production point of view, I can put my kettle in use boiling again quicker because I've taken the product out quicker. I can get more throughput during a day.
And you've got a 15-barrel system. I don't know if we mentioned that, which is a pretty good capacity. I mean, are you the largest capacity brewer right now in the area?
In Northwest Arkansas, I am, but I don't know about the state. I know there's a Diamond Bear, and I don't know what size they are. I just don't know. I actually oversized a little bit. I took their 15-barrel system. I guest brewed at some places with the same equipment with the 15-barrel system. There were a couple things I wasn't happy about with it. I didn't want to use as many rice hulls as they had to do on their wheat mashes. So my mash tun is, the diameter is 5 inches larger so that my bed is thinner. And I have not had to use any rice hulls. I've had no stuck sparges. It's going well.
Where'd you get your equipment? Who's the manufacturer?
3 of the 4 pieces come from Springfield, Missouri. I really wanted to stay as close as home as I could for as much as I could. They're an outfit up there called Custom Metalcraft. Really wonderful to work with. I just couldn't afford to get everything there, so I went to our neighbors to the north in Canada, and I got my mash tun from them, and then I ordered a couple fermenters through them too. Oh, I also got 4 used fermenters that I was fortunate enough to pick up a few months ago.
And your mash tun and your kettle are steam heated.
Yes, I picked up 2 boilers. I'm doing them, I guess it'd be parallel, and I can send it to 3 zones. There's 1 zone on the mash tun, and then there's 2 zones on the kettle. So I can use that to distribute the heat as needed.
Why did you make that choice as opposed to, say, direct fire, gas, or?
Well, the steam heat that you get from a boiler is a little bit more efficient. You're going to be able to jump up to temperature quicker, and you don't get the caramelization if you don't want it. You can leave it on the steam and caramelize if you really want to, but you're almost stuck caramelizing sometimes when you have a direct fire underneath.
And what's in the basement?
What's brewing right now? What's fermenting?
The containers. We'll get to what's inside here in a second, but what do you got down there?
Oh, I've got 2 30-barrel units. One's a bright tank and one's a fermenter, and they're both pressure vessels. And I've got 4 24-barrel open fermenters, and they all have cooling capacity on them with chiller loops. Well, that's it.
So I would imagine that the open fermenters. Why did you choose open? I'm assuming that's because of the styles of beers that you want to brew. We haven't really talked about that.
Yeah, a couple of the styles I'm doing are the wheat beers, a Dunkelweiss and a Hefeweizen, and I'm going to have something in the Saison line too. And those are all good beers to open ferment. One of the reasons I got them was because I found them used, to be honest with you. And I had to think about it. There's used stuff out there I wouldn't get, but the opportunity to get them and the match with the brews I wanted to do, I couldn't pass up.
So talk about your recipes. I mean, we had the Dunkelweizen earlier, which was a tasty brew.
Yeah, really good. Nice kind of clove and banana kind of phenols. Really nice.
And you've got 30 barrels of that downstairs. So you're in business. I mean, you're going along. Talk about that recipe.
Well, I love the Dunkelweiss. I was in Denmark a few years ago, just after I started home brewing, and they had a Paulaner Dunkelweiss on tap. And I'd never had a Dunkelweiss, and we don't get much of that in America, really. And I sat there in that beer garden just wondering, what the heck am I drinking? And I had she was dressed in her lederhosen and all. She came over, started taking pictures with me. My wife was nice enough to take pictures of it. That was my Facebook picture for a while. I just love that beer. I have not found the Paulaner in America, the Dunkelweiss. They have other ones. But I tried to mirror that recipe, and I've been entering that in homebrew contests. I've got a pile of paperwork here I was going through earlier. I'm going to frame some of these things and hang them around the tasting room. But the Dunkelweiss in the last contest I entered was the Kansas City Beer Meisters, and I was fortunate enough to get a gold medal for it.
Oh, awesome!
Thank you.
Excellent. It's a good beer. It's a tasty beer.
Yeah, it was really good.
We also had a bit of your pale ale coming off the right straight off the fermenter, so it's a little green. It's got a little ways to go as far as conditioning goes, but also a tasty beer. What is there a certain style of hopping that you're going for with the pale ale, or what are you looking for?
I'm looking for a real clear, obvious hopped component to it. I want to kind of push the upper edge with the hoppiness. I don't want somebody to drink a pale ale and say, where's the hops? On that note, though, I am going to have to tweak my recipe timing a bit with the system. I have learned that I am ending up with more bittering than I wanted and not as much front-end, late addition, simply because of the transfer times and so on. So there'll be an adjustment. The first one is a little more bittered than I'd want, but it's still, I'm happy with the beer, and I'll just kind of tweak it a little by little. But I do like the late addition hops. I'm doing some Cascade and some Saaz.
And you've got the whirlpool to play with. I mean, you can do, after boil whirlpool hopping right there, as well as dry hopping, of course. So you've got that additional component there that other breweries your size might not have. So that may work out to be an additional advantage there.
Yeah, I'm hoping it is. I've tried to set up myself here so that I can take advantage of these types of things, because you don't want to change that after you get your brew house in.
So what's the next step? I mean, are you officially open?
We're officially open. Haven't had the grand opening. We're still kind of getting the squeaky bumps in the road and all that out. We had people in here drinking yesterday for the first time. Just a small handful of people, and some people stopped in. I didn't even know. I mean, it was kind of neat to have just strangers come in and sit down and drink my beer. We've been doing some charities for a while. We've had the licensing, the ability to go out and give samples and all. The last piece we got was the ability to have people in the tasting room. The fire marshal had to sign off on that. But we've done tastings. We did a charity this last weekend, Polo of the Ozarks. And we went through most of a half barrel of Hefeweizen. The Hefeweizen is done. It's in half barrels. Been sending it out around town. I've got a bunch of stops tomorrow that are taking it. And should have the Pale Ale and the Dunkelweizen right behind it.
So you're marketing over the bar right now, just over, on tap. You're not bottling or canning yet.
No, just everything is in the kegs. If somebody comes in, they can get a growler. We've got growlers here that they can, tap it off. I'll put a little CO2 layer on it, and hopefully it'll stay fresh until they drink it.
So how many places in town are you at?
I think we're on tap at 4 right now, although I got about 6 more commitments today, and I'm delivering to 3 or 4 of them tomorrow. So it's growing exponentially right now. I didn't really go around ahead of time because I didn't want to put people in the position of needing beer and me not having it ready for them.
Mm-hmm. What have you approached anybody as far as doing custom beers for any particular establishments, or what's your marketing plan going forward?
Yeah, it's funny you mention that. There's been a little bit of that going around. The amphitheater and I talked about a year ago. They've had some storm problems lately, and they have a little setback. But I talked to Terry Trotter actually at Polo of the Ozarks again this weekend, and we look to be doing beers for them and possibly a custom beer for them, because they have a pretty big venue and they go through a lot of beer out there. I've got a restaurant who says they want to commit to a 15-barrel batch. And I'm the one that's slowing that up because I can't free up a fermenter for them yet. Mm.
So you're already having growing pains. You just got started.
Yeah. I've still got to get the process down so that I can really push the product through a little bit faster, too. I've got, we brewed 6 batches in the last 3 weeks. I'd like to be brewing 4 batches a week right now.
So you are at this point, you were just making the thing up as you go along. I mean, you are essentially paving a brand new road. I mean, you not only for just your business, but for the other breweries in the area. I mean, you guys are kind of making this stuff up as you go along, and you've got to be flexible to do that.
Oh, absolutely. This is a big learning curve. I don't have an education as a brewer. I had to learn, kind of the hard way, and there were plenty of bumps. It was told to me it would be a lot of hard work, and that's an understatement. I had all-nighters out here. I've been out here till, well past midnight several times. Unfortunately, I even had to miss the last homebrew meeting because I had to paint the walls downstairs because I had an inspection next morning where they told me I had to paint them. So.
And you're not going it alone as far as the brewery work goes?
Oh, no. I've got 2 employees right now. They're both part-time, but it gives me coverage for the day. I've got somebody lined up theoretically to tend bar here. And after I establish contacts and get the sales set up, I'll probably have somebody delivering. I want to do that at first, of course. But I see at least 4 employees. The 2 I've had going for the last 2 to 4 weeks have been great. I couldn't do it without them.
So you get to, under the license you've got the ability to self-distribute.
That is a great opportunity, and I don't know why other brewers or breweries didn't start before this, because that's been out there for a while. The self-distribution cuts about half the cost off of your product. literally. So I can go out there, and I think everybody should be entitled to drink good beer at a fair price. So I'm going to have my beer out there. I'm going to price it with Budweiser. And I'm getting a great response from the bars from that, too.
Now, what kind of challenge? We understand from the movie Beer Wars. I don't know if you guys have seen that documentary, but it's a very competitive environment out there with the big boys doing certain things to compete with smaller breweries. Are you seeing any of that, or what's your perspective on the marketplace? How difficult is it to approach a business with an established tap line, and how do you edge your way in there?
I haven't really seen anybody aggressive like that. I think there's some misunderstandings from some of the distributors. I did have one restaurant who was lined up to take my beer, and he called me a couple weeks ago, really just asking. He says, "Steve, my distributor from another big beer brand told me that you have to go through him. You can't just self-distribute here. And I was looking forward to getting your beer." I said, "Well, I can self-distribute," and mention Native Arkansas Brewer to him, and I think it'll get all cleared up. And well, he's got my beer now, so it's working.
So how who did you knock off the tap line?
Let's see. On that one, they had a kind of a orange wheat beer that he didn't have on the tap very long. He really wasn't happy with it. I don't remember who made that one. At Grubb's, they're going to take off Sam Adams. Let's see. Over at the little place like the Beer Keg. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
it's a tiny place.
It's a tiny place, and my wife kept laughing at me. "Why are you going to go in there?" I said, "You know what? There are people in there that need good beer." So they're going to put me on an empty tap. They've got 4 taps, and one of them's been empty forever because all they have in there is Bud and Bud Light.
And the place probably isn't bigger than this little tasting room here.
No, it isn't. They probably have a capacity of 10 to 15 people.
Now, are you going to have to service your own tap lines? Are you going to have to provide that service to them?
Yes, absolutely. I have been cleaning tap lines already. You just put that solution through it, let it sit in there a while, and then rinse it out, and it seems to be good to go.
So that's one disadvantage of not going through a distributor, is that you've got to do that yourself. I mean, you've got to hit the pavement. You've got to drive the refrigerated trailer that you showed us out back, which is really cool. But you've got to schlep the kegs and clean the tap lines and maintain the account. And that's the advantage of going through somebody else, is you don't have to worry about that.
Oh, that's very true. It's definitely work. There's the distributors earn their money. They're working for it out there. And if I go to another state, I'm going to have to go through a distributor. If I want to grow to the point of going to Missouri or Oklahoma or somewhere, and I have to do that, I'll hire a distributor. In Arkansas, if you hire a distributor, you've hired them permanently for life, forever. That's one of the laws in Arkansas. So if I ever get to the point, I think it's 30,000 barrels a year in Arkansas you can grow to as a native brewer. If I ever got bigger than that, I'd have to push it through a distributor after that. But you have to be very careful about who you select. There have been clients that have had the same distributor for 50, 60 years, and you can change names, you can do whatever you want, but you cannot change your distributor.
Really? Mm-hmm. That's amazing. You knew that.
Yeah, it's a 3-tier system. It's not what most of us really would like, and most beer lovers certainly wouldn't have proposed any of these rules. They're all for, protecting the distributors, collecting tax at each step. There's lots of reasons why they're in effect. They're really not to help the beer drinker.
Well, you and I, Andy, have had the conversation about certain brands that we wish that we had access to, and you had discovered that there were some distributors that had the agreement to distribute those, but they just simply weren't distributing those beers. But I didn't realize that it was like a lifetime deal, that once you were locked in, you were locked in.
Right. The distributor has to release the company. So if you are a new distributor, you want to carry somebody's beer, you have to ask the distributor to release them to you. And they're not going to. They're going to say, "Wow, there's a demand for that? Well, maybe we'll satisfy the demand." So even if they're not bringing the beer in, if they'd signed that agreement with them a long time ago, they probably won't ever give it up because they've got control over it.
So politics. I mean, you got to think about politics when you're getting into that agreement. I mean, and then you got to think about on down the line what big breweries are going to merge or buy each other, and then the distributor relationship changes. The dynamic changes there as well.
It does, and there's other laws. And I had to talk to someone in Little Rock today because I am considering selling retail kegs. That is such a paperwork-burdened issue now. They've changed the law recently, so most of my kegs are going to be sold retail out of Liquor World and Macadoodles. I learned that if I sell a retail keg, not only do I have to do the paperwork, collect the money from them, that if they don't return the keg to me within a certain period, it's, I think, 60 days, I have to pay the state $25.
You have to pay the state $25 if they don't return the keg to you.
Yes, and the lady at the state said, I don't know how they got that legislation passed. I don't understand it, but that's just the way it is.
So how long until you get a bottling line or a canning line, or is that even in your concept of a plan for the future?
Yeah, I'd like to do it sometime. I've heard about possibly doing a mobile canning or bottling line. I'm still kind of torn between what I'm going to do. I like the idea of canning. They can go anywhere, but the tradition, I don't know. I like the bottles too. So it'll be at least a few months, maybe a year. I don't really have a handle on the time frame yet.
So if you have a mobile canning line or a bottling line, you could drive that to other breweries in the area as well.
That's the idea, and somebody else is thinking about it locally. My other job I've been doing is home inspecting. I did a home inspection for someone about a month ago, and we got to talking about the brewery. And he goes, "Oh, you're opening a brewery. I'm opening a mobile canning line." And I forgot the fellow's name right now, but he's out there investigating it seriously.
I mean, that sounds like a very interesting business opportunity. I mean, you got all these little breweries sprouting up around the area. That's one bit of investment that they wouldn't have to go through.
I mean, it certainly sounds like a good idea. Might very well be a great idea, but then, as I think Steve was pointing out earlier, just having a bottling and canning line changes the sort of inspections you need for this building, and you might end up in a situation where you couldn't ever get that approved if it was mobile because it's, doesn't have the right walls, doesn't have 3 sinks, doesn't, they've got all these weird rules about what they want in your canning in your brewery. And so I don't know. I mean, it might fly. It could be one of those things where people just keep throwing walls in front of you. I don't know.
Yeah, it would definitely have a lot of challenges. And I've seen some of the mobile vendor carts, and I saw something in the news a month or so ago about how hard it is to provide food out of one of those. Like Andy says, you've got to have all these things in your vehicle, and you've got to get health inspected.
So...
Oh, I do have another question that might be better suited for closer to the end. You can always edit, I guess. I was going to ask you, so you do have the tasting room here. What are the sort of hours do you plan? Do you plan to be open most of the day, during most working hours, or do you plan to have like a nighttime, happy hour? How's that going to go down?
Yeah, I came up with some hours, and I'm struggling to remember them, and they are posted on our Facebook site. But more or less, we're going to take advantage of the Sunday hours in particular because we can do carry-out on Sunday. People are often surprised that you can get carry-out on Sunday from a liquor establishment, but native Arkansas brewer, you can do that. We'll give them growlers to go. So my Sunday hours are roughly from 1 until 6 or 7, so they come in the afternoon or evening. But the rest of the week, the hours are going to be in the early afternoon, I think about 1 or 2 o'clock, and we're not going to be a late-night establishment for drinking. We're not really focused on drinking here. So we're going to shut down by 9 every night. And we will have a happy hour. The happy hours will run from an hour after we open to an hour before we close.
Well, it's a cool place. I'll have to set the GPS to the address every time I come here for a little while. It is out a little ways if you don't know where you're going, but maybe that's an advantage. I mean, you are, between Springdale and Fayetteville and what is that? Elm Springs out that way, or Elkins, or what is Goshen? Okay. See, I don't know where I am, but it is a cool place. It is a nice location that is rural and within view of the White River, as you said, showed us before. So it's something, we've been to industrial breweries or in breweries in industrial locations, but this is a nice change of pace.
We're actually going to build our home here in a year or so. We've got 12 more acres, and we're actually on the river, like you said. So my wife and I are going to move out here. We live about 6-7 minutes from here now. It's not that far. If you're at Mission and Crossover, it's about a 6-7 minute drive.
It's not bad. It just seems like you're farther. But Goshen is a growing area as far as people living out here. So
we've actually had a lot of interest from bicycle riders. We're on a kind of a main bicycle workout route, and there's a fellow that's putting together a bicycle tour of the breweries of Northwest Arkansas. He's emailed me, and then he stopped in the other day. He's going to be going from Tanglewood over to Fossil Cove to the Hog House, and we're going to be the last one on the stop.
Well, awesome. Anything else, Andy? Besides you've got an empty glass?
Well, I'll get me one of those maps, but I'll be on my motorcycle, not on my bicycle.
I've got a scooter, so I.
There is one thing, I'd like to say. Something I've really noticed is we are having an impact on the local community, both in terms of hiring. But this year, the one thing that really struck me was we've been in a drought here, and my wife's farrier was out, and I was talking to him one day, and he's a nice guy, and he's got a farm with cattle about 5-10 minutes from here, out in Hinesville area. And he said, well, people are all selling their cattle, and it looks like I'm going to have to sell my cattle. And the prices are down. I don't really want to do it, but we can't afford to feed them. And I looked at him. I said, well, I'm going to be needing to get rid of my spent grain. And he just said, what? And we talked about it for a bit. He went home and looked it up, and he came back. He said, yeah, my cows are going to love that. And he's actually now not sold his cattle. He comes in here when we brew. He cleans out my mash tun for me. Really nicely, I'll add. He takes away all the spent grain, and he's actually acquiring some more livestock.
Awesome.
Well, good for him.
Beer saves the day. Well, that's a good story to end with, I think. Well, congratulations, Steve, and thank you for having us out, and best of luck in the future.
Well, thank you, James and Andy.
Well, thanks again to Steve and Andy. Very cool place. Steve's going to be brewing a lot of good beer. I took home a growler of the Dunkelweiss. Tasty stuff. It's a fun location, too, out in the country, enough to, give it a rural feel, but close enough to town for a lot of folks to come and find it. So anyway, if you're in the area, check it out. He's open for business now. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. You can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store, too. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are A Brewer's Guide to Opening a Nano Brewery, your $10,000 brewery consultant for $15, appropriate for the content today, and 5-liter narrow-mouth Erlenmeyer flask with heavy-duty rim. Thanks again, everybody, and remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. I would greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com as well. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.